They said she died on her wedding night. They said her ghost haunted the castle. They were wrong. She was very much alive, and she had been waiting 15 years for the man who left her to finally come home. For 15 years, the servants of Blackwood Castle left raw meat and a lit candle at the foot of the forbidden stairs. They believed they were feeding a ghost. They were wrong. She was alive. She had counted every one of those candles. And tonight, the husband who had abandoned her on their wedding night had finally come home.
Before we begin, dear listener, may I ask one small favor of you? If you love stories like this one, please take a moment to tap that like button and to subscribe to the channel so you never miss a tale. And more than anything, please leave a comment below, even just a single word. Tell me where you are listening from tonight, or which character you already care about. I read every one, and your comments are what carry these stories to new listeners and keep them alive. So please, like, comment, and subscribe. Let's continue.
The year was 1847, and the road to Blackwood Castle still clung to the edge of the cliffs like a scar that had never healed. Sebastian Blackwood, Duke of Blackwood, had not travelled this road in 15 years. He had spent those years running from the memory of the woman he had left behind. At 38, the silver streaking his temples was the physical toll of a 15-year exile fueled by guilt. He had not remarried. He had not so much as looked at another woman. In his breast pocket, where another man might have carried a watch, he carried a thin gold wedding band. Hers, the one she had thrown at his feet the night he left, the one he had picked up off the floor and never returned, and never stopped touching. The carriage creaked as it climbed. The wind howled off the sea, carrying salt and the distant cry of gulls. Sebastian stared out at the grey sky and the churning water below. His father was dead. The estate was his. He had no choice. The letter had come 3 weeks earlier. Thomas Ashworth, his childhood friend, the only man he trusted, had written, "Your father has passed. The estate is yours. The castle is in ruins. The servants are terrified, and there are rumors of a haunting I cannot explain. You must see for yourself." Sebastian had read it 3 times and nearly burned it twice. But the weight of the past was heavier than his pride, and at last he had come. Thomas was waiting at the entrance, a tall, steady man with kind eyes and a worried mouth. For 15 years, he had watched the estate crumble from a distance, powerless. 3 times, he had tried to break into the barred north wing. 3 times, Lady Margaret had threatened the law, changed the locks, and silenced the servants. He had heard footsteps behind those walls, crying, a woman singing at night. His letters to Sebastian had been intercepted before they ever left the county. He had carried his failure like a stone. "Sebastian, you came. I had no choice. The estate is mine. Then look at this." Thomas pulled a worn ledger from his coat. "Food is disappearing. Candles, meat, bread. Someone is living in this castle. Someone surviving on what the servants leave at the bottom of those stairs." Sebastian felt his heart stop. Offerings. The servants think the north wing is haunted. They leave food for the Duke's dead bride, and they are too frightened to climb a single step further. But someone is taking it. Someone is alive up there. "Bella," Sebastian whispered. "I don't know," Thomas said. "But 15 years ago, you left a young woman alone in this castle, and she was never seen again. And your mother sealed that wing the very next week. Something is living in the shadows, Sebastian. Go and see what it is." The north wing had been barred against Thomas for 15 years, but it could not be barred against the master of Blackwood. Sebastian took his father's ring of keys from the steward, and the locks his mother had changed answered, one by one, to the new Duke. He pushed open the massive oak doors. The south wing was dark, cold, draped in dust and cobwebs, and the smell of damp stone. But the moment he stepped into the north corridor, everything changed. The air was warmer. Fresh candles burned in the sconces. The floor had been swept. The faint smell of wood smoke and dried herbs hung in the air. Someone was living here, maintaining this place by hand, in secret, for years. He passed the grand staircase, the ballroom, the library. At the far end of a long corridor, he stopped. A woman stood at the other end of the hall. She wore a white gown, her dark hair loose around her face, her skin pale in the candlelight. She was watching him, and not moving. His heart stopped. He would have known that face in total darkness. Arabella. Bella. His bride. The woman he had been told had died on her wedding night. She stepped forward, her bare feet making no sound on the stone. Then she saw him clearly, and the candle slipped from her fingers and clattered to the floor. She took a step back, trembling, unable to breathe. She thought she was imagining him. She thought she had finally lost her mind. "No," she whispered, "you cannot be here." He took a step toward her. She stepped back, and the trembling hardened into something else. Her jaw set, her eyes burned. "Do you know how many nights I waited?" Her voice shook, sharp as broken glass. "Do you know how many times I thought I heard your voice in the hallway and told myself I was going mad? Do you know what starvation feels like? Do you know what it is to be forgotten by the only person who was ever supposed to protect you?" She laughed, a broken, bitter sound. "Look at me. Look at what you left behind. I have been waiting," she said, "to tell you that I hate you. I hate you for leaving me. I hate you for making me believe I was nothing." His own eyes were wet. "I never forgot you. I searched for you. I was told you had run away with another man. I was shown a letter, in your hand. It said you had married me for the money. It said you would leave the moment your father's debt was cleared." She stared at him, and the rage flickered into something colder. "What letter? I never wrote a letter." And he knew. He had been lied to. His mother had shown him a forgery, had told him Bella had betrayed him, had orchestrated all of it. He had been young, proud, foolish. He had believed the lie without ever confronting her. He had walked away without asking. And she had been trapped here ever since. "I was a fool," he said. "I believed a lie. I never asked you. I never gave you a chance. I left you here." She looked at him a long moment. Then she turned and walked away. She did not look back. He did not sleep. He sat in the entrance hall until dawn, turning over everything he thought he knew. In the morning, he went looking. He found it by following the scratches on the floor. The drag marks of a door opened and closed 10,000 times. Not the bedchamber down the hall where she slept, but a second room, hidden behind a false wall, where she had kept the things she could not let his mother find. He pressed the wall, and it swung open. What he saw stopped him in the doorway. A faded wedding dress hung on a hook, the hem still stained with mud. A crude splint of old wood and torn linen lay beside the bed. A pile of leather ledgers stood in the corner, edges worn soft from handling. He opened one with shaking hands. It was a financial record in her father's writing, the debt that had destroyed her family, the debt that had sold her to him. He kept reading, and slowly he understood the night she had tried to escape. She had packed a small bag and walked out of the castle, heart pounding. She had made it to the cliffs and turned down the path toward the village. She had not seen the loose stone. She slipped, she fell, she broke her leg on the rocks below the path. She screamed, but there was no one to hear. She dragged herself back up to the castle, inch by inch, her legs screaming, and collapsed in the entrance hall, and lay there for hours waiting for someone to find her. No one came. But someone had seen her fall. Lady Margaret Blackwood had watched from the window of the dower house. She had seen the girl go down. She had seen her crawl back inside. And she had made a decision. The girl was a liability. She could not be allowed to leave, could not be allowed to speak. She had to disappear without dying, because death left questions, and silence left nothing. So Lady Margaret sealed the north wing. She told the servants the bride had died. She told them the castle was cursed. She left raw meat and a candle at the foot of the stairs herself, and let the ghost story spread and thicken until no living soul would go near that corridor. And she left Bella to survive on offerings meant for the dead. In the margin of one ledger, in his mother's own hand, death is mercy. I wanted her forgotten. He stood a long time with that page in his hands. The cruelty ran deeper than status, though status was the root of it. Lady Margaret had been the daughter of a disgraced house. She had clawed her way into the Blackwood name through marriage, and spent her whole life terrified of losing it. And Bella, a cartographer's daughter, low-born, with no standing, was the threat she could not abide. But it was worse than snobbery. Sebastian dug further, and found records proving his father had approved the original debt scheme while Lady Margaret designed it. They had engineered the ruin of Bella's family together. The marriage had been a trap, and his father had known, and his father had let it happen. Behind a loose stone in the fireplace, he found a stack of letters. He broke the seal on the first, Bella's hand, addressed to him. He counted them, 43. In the early days, she had written, a few sympathetic servants still dared the stairs and smuggled her notes toward the post. And when no reply ever came, she had believed he was reading them and choosing, every time, not to answer. Then the servants grew too frightened to climb at all, and still she wrote, to a husband she was sure had simply stopped caring, and hid the letters she had no way to send, one for every season she waited. His own first letters, he understood now, had never reached her either. He had written in those first weeks, demanding answers, begging her to explain, and when no reply came, he had let the forgery become truth in his mind. He had stopped writing. He had gone abroad. He had let 15 years pass. He felt sick. He had been a puppet, and he had been too proud and too cowardly to look past the first lie. And there was one thing more. On a ledge in the corner sat a candle stub, burned to nothing, set before a faint seam in the wall, a candle no one alive seemed to have lit. He pressed the stones around it. Nothing moved, but a thread of cold air breathed through the crack, as though the wall opened onto somewhere he could not yet reach. He filed the thought away, and kept it. He found her in the library, standing by the fire. She was not reading. She was watching the door, waiting. She had known he would come. You found the room, she said. I found everything. You want to stay. It was not a question. I do. Then look at what you made me. She pulled the collar of her gown aside to show the deep, jagged scar across her shoulder. She lifted her hem to show the leg that had knitted wrong because no one had set it. She held out her thin, marked wrists. This is what 15 years of silence did. You did not just abandon me, Sebastian. You destroyed me. I found the letters, he said quietly. Yours. Mine. My mother burned the ones she did not keep as trophies. She engineered the debt. She forged the letter. She planned the marriage. She planned all of this. He stopped several feet from her, every instinct pushing him forward, his hands at his sides. I will not let her get away with it. I will prove I am not the man I was, but I need you to let me try. She looked at him for a long time. Stay, she said at last, but do not touch me. Do not speak to me unless I speak first. Do not assume you have earned anything. I understand. She walked away. She did not look back. He stayed. He slept in the room beside hers. He ate alone. He walked the gardens alone. He waited. The first nights were torture. He would wake in the dark and hear her moving on the other side of the wall and press his ear to the stone just to know she was still breathing. Then, one evening, he carried her supper to her door, set it down, and before he withdrew, he said only one thing. I kept your ring. I have carried it every day for 15 years. I did not deserve to return it, so I never tried. But it is yours, and it has always been yours. He set the thin gold band on the tray beside the plate, and left without waiting to see her face. In the morning the plate was empty. The ring was gone from the tray. He did not know she had put it on a chain and hidden it beneath her gown, against the scar. He turned to the dead greenhouse next. Glass half shattered, soil grey and hard. He cleared it without telling anyone why, pulled out the dead things, mended what glass he could reach, turned the earth by hand. He wanted to give her something living. It was there, near the north wing one night after dark, that he heard it, a low humming behind the walls. Not Bella's voice. He had memorized Bella's voice. This was older, a lullaby, slow and rhythmic, the kind of song a woman hums when she is working alone and not thinking of being heard. He stood in the corridor until it faded. So he went to the servants, sat in the kitchen with the oldest of them and listened. They told him of humming in the dark, of candles found burning in rooms no one had entered, of a grey figure at the end of hallways. He asked who the offerings were truly for. They looked at one another. For the grey lady, one said at last. Not for your wife, for Eleanor. She was here long before your bride. The next day he found the name in the church register. Eleanor Grey, a castle servant 50 years gone, with a burial record and no grave. And one old woman who had served 30 years told him something that stayed with him. I always left 2 portions at the foot of the stairs, one for the bride, one for Eleanor. I never knew why, it only ever felt right. He went to the dower house and laid the ledgers and the letters on the table before his mother. Lady Margaret did not flinch. She glanced at the evidence the way one glances at weather. You were always sentimental, she said. Your father at least understood what the name required. You forged her hand. You let me grieve a living woman. You sealed her behind a wall and fed her like a dog through a ghost story you invented. I protected this family. Her voice never rose. She was a map-maker's daughter. She would have dragged the Blackwood name into the gutter her own father came from. I gave her more than she deserved. I let her live. You call that living. I call it mercy. She folded her hands. Burn the ledgers, Sebastian. Send the creature away quietly. In a year, no one will remember she existed, and you will thank me, as your father would have. He looked at the woman who had raised him and felt nothing he recognized as love. No, he said, they are going to remember her name, and they are going to remember yours beside it. He walked out without another word. When he told Bella, she turned from the window, her face unreadable. I know, she said. I found the records in those ledgers years ago. The debt, the forgery, all of it. I knew what she had done to my family. But no one would enter the north wing, and no one would believe a dead bride's ghost. The proof was worthless until someone finally opened the door. He looked at her. She had been sitting on the evidence of her own destruction for over a decade, able to do nothing with it. The cruelty of that settled in his chest like a stone he could not name. Then we open the door together, he said. Not me, us. You have kept the case for 15 years, Bella. You should be the one to close it. For the first time, she did not walk away. She will not go quietly, she said. Then we will be ready for her." Lady Margaret did not go quietly. That night, she came back through the secret passage she had used since Sebastian was a boy. The gap in the old stone that joined the dower house to the library. Its inner face, a blank seam Bella had pressed 100 times and never moved, for it opened only from the outside. She moved through it with a knife in her hand and her breathing steady, and pressed her ear to the panel. She heard her son's voice, low and careful. She heard the bride's, cold and unafraid. She heard exactly what she feared most. She was losing control of the story. She pushed the panel open and stepped into the library. Bella saw her first and screamed. Sebastian turned, saw the knife, saw the clean old hatred in his mother's face. "Mother, put it down. She has destroyed everything I built." She lunged for Bella. Sebastian stepped between them. The blade caught him in the shoulder. He grunted, but did not fall. He caught her wrist, twisted until the knife dropped, and shoved her back. She stumbled. The fire was behind her. Her sleeve caught the flame. She screamed. He was already moving, dragging her clear of the hearth, beating out the burning cloth with his own coat. She collapsed, badly burned along one arm and side, but alive and conscious, and looking up at him with the same cold expression she had worn his entire life. Bella crossed the room and pressed her hands to his shoulder, holding the cloth firm against the wound. She did not speak. She only kept the pressure steady. "You stepped in front of her," she said quietly. "I promised." She did not answer, but she did not let go. They did not bury it as a private family matter. Bella would not allow it, and Sebastian would not have asked her to. The county magistrate convened his inquiry in the great hall of Blackwood itself, and that was Bella's doing. She had insisted it be held in the castle, in the light, in the very rooms the lie had been built in. She walked into that hall on her ruined leg, without leaning on anyone's arm, and she carried the ledgers herself. It was she who laid the forged letter beside her own true correspondence, so the magistrate could see, in a single glance, that the hands did not match. It was she who read aloud the marginal note, "Death is mercy. I wanted her forgotten," in a voice that did not shake. It was she who called the servants forward, one by one, the same servants who had fed a ghost for 15 years, and let them testify to the humming, the candles, the offerings, the locks that changed in the night. The physicians described the state of her leg and the conditions of the north wing. The old woman who had left 2 portions wept as she spoke, and through all of it, Lady Margaret sat rigid and unrepentant, until at last, asked directly whether she denied the charges, she lifted her chin and said, "I protected my family's name. I would do it again." That single sentence finished her. She was stripped of her title, her allowance, and her authority over the estate, and confined by court order to a private institution, where she remained the rest of her life. She never apologized. She never changed. Sebastian visited once. He never went back. The truth of the engineered debt was entered into the county record. Bella's family name was cleared, formally and undeniably. It was not a clean or triumphant process. It took months, and there were those who did not believe it, and those who did not care. But at the end of it, Bella was free, legally, formally, in the light, and she had freed herself. There was still the matter of the Grey Lady. They worked through it together, his church records, and her 15 years of half-believed memories, the footsteps in empty corridors, the lullaby beyond the wall, the candle burning in a room she had left in darkness. For years, she had thought it madness. Now she thought she understood. The old woman who had always left 2 portions sat with them and told them what the staff had passed down for generations. Eleanor Grey had been with child, carrying the child of the old Duke, Sebastian's grandfather, who had ruled Blackwood 2 generations before. She had been locked in the north wing and left there. No one spoke of it afterward. No one ever gave her a grave. They searched the churchyard and found the place where the ground had settled wrong, an unmarked corner, overgrown and forgotten. They had her remains properly buried and a stone set above her. Sebastian read a prayer. Bella stood beside him with her hands folded, and when it was done, she stayed a little longer than he did. That night, the castle was quiet in a way it had not been in 50 years. No humming, no footsteps, no candle burning, where darkness had been left. Bella stood in the north wing hallway and listened to the silence a long while. She was waiting too, she said, for someone to open the door. Yes, Sebastian said. I think she was. Forgiveness did not arrive in a single moment. It arrived in hundreds of small ones. She refused his help when she tried to rise the morning after the knife. She refused to share his table for days. She woke from nightmares of the fall, and the cold, and the silence, and he heard her through the wall, and stayed in his own room, because she had not told him he could come in, and he had learned to wait. Then, slowly, she began to shift. She let him leave her meals at the door. She let him sit on the far side of the fireplace in the evenings, without sending him away. She let him speak without flinching. She still healed in fits and starts. She was still afraid, but she had felt his blood on her hands the night he stepped in front of a blade for her, and she had not been able to stop thinking about it since. Over weeks, and then months, they talked, through the night, about things neither had told another soul. She told him how she had rationed the food, how she had taught herself to read the estate accounts, how she had wept for 3 years and been dry-eyed for the 12 that followed. He told her about the night he had burned her father's letters and made himself believe she had never loved him, about every country he had crossed that could not put enough distance between him and her face. They laughed at things that were not entirely funny. They sat in silences that stopped being uncomfortable. They touched, not a kiss, a hand laid against a cheek, a forehead resting on a forehead, and neither pulled away. She began to trust him. She began to believe the man before her was not the boy who had left. And she began to love him again, quietly and against her own will, the way a season turns, not in a single day, but in so many small ones that you cannot say exactly when it happened. He said it first, one evening in the greenhouse, among the first green things that had come back to life. I love you. I have always loved you. I never stopped. She looked at him a long time. His eyes were wet. Then she drew the chain from beneath her collar, and on it hung the thin gold band he had carried for 15 years. I never took it off, she said. I love you too. I never stopped either. She kissed him. He kissed her back. Outside, for once, the sea was calm. They rebuilt Blackwood together. They mended the roof and cleaned the rooms and filled the greenhouse until it was green from wall to wall. They planted a garden on the south side where the sun lay longest. They filled the halls with people again. Servants who chose to stay. Neighbors who came to understand what had happened behind that wall. The castle stopped feeling like a place where something terrible lived. It began to feel like a home. Bella healed, not all at once. Some mornings were still hard, and some nights she still woke from old dreams into the dark. But she stopped flinching when he touched her. She stopped waiting for him to leave. She began to trust the morning. Sebastian healed too. He stopped running. He stopped punishing himself in ways that led nowhere. He began to forgive himself slowly, the way she had begun to trust him, not in a single day, but in so many small ones that he could not say exactly when the weight finally lifted. Decades later, every year, Bella returned to the cliff where her life had nearly ended. The loose stone was still there. The sea still broke against the rocks below. But everything else had changed. Once she had stood there alone, staring into the dark, believing she had nothing left to live for. Now Sebastian stood beside her, and their children and grandchildren laughed somewhere behind them on the path. 15 years ago, she had looked over that edge and seen only darkness. Now she looked at the horizon. She took Sebastian's hand, and this time, neither of them walked away. Dear listener, as the sea grows calm over Blackwood, and the candles in the north wing are finally allowed to burn for the living, I hope you will carry a small piece of this story with you into the quiet of tonight. Bella waited 15 years in the dark, believing she had been forgotten, and still she kept the ledgers, still she wrote the letters, still she refused to let the truth die, even when no one would open the door. Her story is a gentle reminder that endurance is not the same as defeat, and that the people who seem most lost are often the ones holding on most fiercely. Sebastian teaches us something too, that it is never too late to stop running, to look past the first comfortable lie, and to step in front of the blade for someone we have wronged. The walls we build to protect ourselves can so easily become the walls that trap the ones we love. But walls can be opened, doors can be unsealed, even a house full of ghosts can become a home again. And perhaps that is the truest comfort of all. That love, built on trust, regained, on truth spoken at last, and on the daily choice to stay, is stronger than any love that was never tested. Second chances are real. New beginnings can arrive behind the most forbidden of doors. So rest now, dear friend. May you be remembered by the ones who matter. May the doors that were closed to you be opened in time, and may you wake tomorrow to a calmer sea. Sleep well. Tomorrow brings another page in your own beautiful story. With heartfelt appreciation, thank you for staying with us until the very end. If this story moved you, please consider subscribing to the channel, leaving a like, and sharing it with someone who needs a little hope and romance tonight. Your encouragement is what keeps these stories alive. Stay until the very end of the video for another tale chosen just for you, and from the bottom of our hearts, thank you for being here.